right now we have a fairly substantial amount of military presence in the Caribbean, more than I think we've ever seen in history. You have a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group out there. You have an amphibious assault ship, and there's a number of different types of fighter aircraft. We've seen bomber aircraft out there, tankers and surveillance and jamming aircraft. So there is a lot of military force and buildup that is happening within this region.
Tensions between the United States and Venezuela have ratcheted up even higher after the seizing of an oil tanker. US Attorney General Pam Bondi claims it was being used to ship sanctioned oil to Iran. The Venezuelan government's reacted with fury, accusing the US of blatant theft and saying the seizure amounted to international piracy. Well, are they right? Let's speak to Corey Ranslem, CEO of Dryad Global, a maritime risk intelligence firm and former US Coast Guard. Welcome to Times at One, Corey. Does the US government appear to be following maritime law with this latest operation and other actions targeting Venezuela?
Hey, Joe. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. It's great to be on the program with you this afternoon. With what we've looked at, it appears that this seizure was legal. It appears that the U.S. had a warrant for the seizure of this vessel. The vessel was also flying a flag of Guyana, which the government said they were falsely flying. So under that, the vessel could also be under maritime law assimilated to a stateless vessel, where theoretically any company could come in and enforce their laws and regulations on that vessel. So what we've looked at with the seizure and the data and information that we have is it looks like it was a legal seizure by the U.S. government.
And excuse my ignorance, but when you say a warrant, who's issuing the warrant?
It appears that the warrant came from the United States courts or the United States government to be able to seize the vessel. And we haven't gotten a lot more information and detail on that right now.
I mean, the Venezuelan government, as I said a moment ago, are claiming that the US are acting like pirates. What constitutes acting like a pirate?
So that's a really good question. When it comes to piracy, is typically an act against an aggressive act against a vessel, whether it's a boarding or a seizure of that vessel outside of legal means. Seizures of vessels happen quite frequently across the world by different governments for different reasons. We see seizures of vessels that come into different ports for violation of environmental regulations, for smuggling drugs or smuggling humans. So under this, the U.S. government feels that they have a case where this vessel was smuggling sanctioned oil. So they had issued, from what we understand, a seizure warrant for the vessel to be able to seize that. So seizing vessels is something that happens fairly constantly around the world for different reasons.
Oh, right. So it does happen because Venezuela is sanctioned by both the UK and US governments, as I understand it. So should there be more interventions to stop them moving sanctioned oil if that's what's going on?
That's a great question, Joe. And honestly, from my background in the Coast Guard and what we do in maritime intelligence, I'm actually very surprised that we have not seen more direct seizures of tankers. And I'll be willing to bet that we are going to see more of them in the coming days and in the coming weeks. And this is an unusual case. The vessel is registered and said that they're flying the flag of Guyana. So the flag state could also have given permission for the seizure of the vessel. So there's a case that if the vessel's in international waters, the flag state working with another government or law enforcement organization could give permission for the seizure of that. Although right now the government of Guyana has come out and said that this vessel was falsely flying their flag. So when you look at that from that perspective, then the vessel would be considered stateless. If the flag state that the vessel says they're registered to and flying is illegal, then the vessel would not have a current flag and would be considered stateless.
Right, it's complicated, isn't it? I mean, what would you expect the US to do with the tanker now?
So I would bet right now we're actually tracking the tanker. It is moving kind of on a northeasterly coast along the island chain. It's kind of in a triangle area between St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines and Barbados. Looks like it's probably being escorted. I would guess that the U.S. is probably going to escort it back to the next closest U.S. port of call, which could be the U.S. Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico. And then we'll probably have the legal part of this then play out from there.
But I mean, there is obviously a risk of further escalation. I mean, depending on what happens, the Venezuelan government's clearly reacted angrily and perhaps unsurprisingly. What could that look like if there is escalation?
Um, From the United States perspective, like I said earlier, I think the United States will probably look at going in to seize more tankers. I don't think this is going to be the first tanker seizure. I think we're going to see more seizures along that. I don't know what Venezuela will do from their perspective to ratchet up. Right now, we have a fairly substantial amount of military presence in the Caribbean, more than I think we've ever seen in history. You have a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group out there. You have an amphibious assault ship, and there's a number of different types of fighter aircraft. We've seen bomber aircraft out there, tankers and surveillance and jamming aircraft. So there is a lot of military force and buildup that is happening within this region.
I mean, right. I mean, it sounds like there needs to be quite a lot of resource going into this area of alleged or real piracy, doesn't it?
Right. That's what I'm surprised about. I've never seen this sort of military force used in one concentrated region for an issue. The U.S. government, as you know, has said that, hey, we're out here because we want to try to stop the drug smuggling. Now they're moving into seizing tankers. It's going to be interesting, really, to see how this plays out for the rest of this calendar year. I think we're going to start to see the tensions rise, and we're going to see additional seizures happen and potentially other action as well.
I mean, is it getting more dangerous in terms of your sort of observation and as a former US Coast Guard? Is it becoming dangerous at sea, or in terms of risk, people wanting to transport goods by ship?
Right now, we're not seeing a huge increase in risk when you look at the greater Caribbean operational basin. The risk really is in transporting goods in and out of Venezuela. That's where the risk is, because at this point, we don't know what the Venezuelan government may do, and we don't know what the military is going to do. But as far as the rest of the Caribbean right now, our threat level hasn't changed for the islands and the rest of the Caribbean as far as operationally. It will be interesting to see, because Chevron, a U.S. oil company, is the primary mover of oil and in and out of Venezuela. So I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see some sort of political action against Chevron, depending on how this ratchets up.
Well, Corey Ranslem, thank you very much for joining us, CEO of Dryad Global, a maritime risk intelligence firm and former US Coast Guard, talking about what's been going on between the US and Venezuela over that tanker being seized. Now, yesterday...
Republican and Democrat politicians have reacted with dismay to the seizure of an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela by the US military. The Trump administration released a video last night of armed troops taking control of the ship, which the US claims was being used to transport an illicit shipment of oil from Venezuela and Iran. The president then spoke to reporters during a meeting at the White House.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
Well, after the video was released, the Republican Senator Rand Paul said it's not the job of the American government to go looking for monsters around the world, while Democrat Chris Coons said he was concerned the president is sleepwalking us into war. I'm joined now by Dr. Christopher Sabatini, who is a senior fellow for Latin America at Chatham House. Christopher, good afternoon.
Thanks, Hugo.
Thanks for being with us. So, look, the US has already been bombing alleged drug boats in the Caribbean Sea. There has been a sort of escalating conflict looming with Venezuela. But until now, it's been about drugs. How big an escalation is this seizing of an oil tanker from what's already been happening?
Well, it demonstrates that this was never really about drugs. This was about trying to promote regime change. And let's be honest, this is an odious regime that has over 800 political prisoners still rotting away in their prisons. It has, repressed the independent media, independent civil society, stole the election last year. This was verified by the Carter Center in the UN. So this is a regime that lacks legitimacy. But the issue is that what Trump has been trying to do over the last 5 months is to mobilize the military, first under the pretenses of combating narcotics trafficking, which really most of the cocaine that is consumed by the Americans does not come from Venezuela. But now clearly the mask has fallen. What this is really about is trying to scare the military and the inner circle around Maduro to basically defect and to open up its doors and to try to install some more legitimate democratic process, if you will, or even a democratic leader. And what he's been doing now with this attack and seizure of the oil tanker is basically trying to cut out some of the revenue that the Venezuelan government collects illegally from trading oil with, in this case, Iran. But it's deeply questionable whether this is legal under maritime law.
Well, so, just the situation of precisely what's happened here then. The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says the ship was being used to transport, as you say, sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. What sanctions are in place? And why is Venezuela transporting Iranian oil? Why is that even happening?
Well, first of all, what Iran does is actually help send diluents and other things to help make the Venezuelan oil much more usable. It's a very thick, heavy crude. It needs to be processed in a special way. Iran has oftentimes tries to resell that oil, but both countries are under U.S. sanctions. Iran, obviously, because of its nuclear attempts, and also Venezuela since 2019, the state-owned oil company PDVSA in Venezuela is currently under U.S. sanctions as well. So they're both sanctioned, and also this boat was illegally flagged as a Guyana tanker. It's not a Guyana tanker. So this was, let's say, quite suspicious, but the move was so dramatic and so over the top that it really does raise some questions about what comes next.
If Trump's plan, as you say, is to remove Maduro from power, will this help him in his aim? Will this sort of thing, is this likely to make other people in Venezuela, other members of his government and system want to overthrow him?
It's a good question, Hugo. So first, I think, first of all, this is a truly corrupt regime that's involved in money laundering, illicit gold mining, narcotics trafficking, and also the sale of pirated oil, if you will. But that's the problem, is even if there is a defection within Maduro's inner circle, it's unlikely to produce a democratic change. This is, again, a very corrupt government. They'll probably be trying to save their own skin, maybe remove Maduro, and Trump has now said that Maduro's days are numbered. But whether that will produce any regime that is more pro-U.S. or even less corrupt is really highly dubious.
Dr. Christopher Sabatini of Chatham House, thank you very much indeed.